Hello, and welcome to another video. In this video, we're going to play some Lethality and Scrapper Scoundrel. Normally, I play Lethality with an actual tactical. In this video, I am playing with Overwhelming Offense. Not really a tactical I would recommend. I completely forgot about it, and I got a Void Star. And I'm pretty sure I didn't even have Viral Elements on me. I assume I already had it, but I didn't. So we're playing without a tactical. Or a tactical that would benefit us in a great way because there was actually cleave in this match. Not that much, but it would have been more damage than what Overwhelming would have had to offer. Anyway, getting into this match, hope everyone had good holidays. I am going to do a little bit more like a gameplay review for this one. It is a longer one, so I'll probably get over most of the topics I want to talk about regarding lethality pretty fast. So getting into it at first, we're still running the 1.4 level cooldown. 1.3 is still really not that affordable for any of the classes that don't have Alacrity passive, so most of the times just not worth it. Switch it up. Operative also gets a passive for, or not really passive, but an active, I guess you could say, for Alacrity through Stem Boost, which is pretty nice. And then you also have the Mastery buff, Tactical Overdrive. During both of those, you are a powerhouse, and on top of that, you're also able to stack Mastery a little bit more and get actual benefit out of the extra Mastery, because it will help with your Tactical Overdrive. I believe that's what it's called, or was it? It's called something. It's something silly. A lot of these abilities have like a reason for their naming, but I feel like they're just not as memorable as like something like a Zorb. You know, like that's pretty iconic, or Undying Rage. All of these abilities have cool names, but not all of them. Toxic Haze, I think is really cool. Toxic Blast is pretty cool too. Kinetic Blast, Flame Burst, stuff like that. Anyway, as you see, I thought I had Viral Elements here. I do not. If I did have Viral Elements here, you would be seeing a lot of white damage splats, not just yellow damage splats, because it does spread your Toxic Blast. Toxic Blast does reset when you kill somebody with it too. There is not a bad TA builder if you're hitting somebody and you're probably going to follow with like a Corrosive Assault instead of like a Shiv. Let's say like your Shiv's already on cooldown or something, maybe opened with Shiv. It's one thing to think about. Compared to using something like Overload Shot's just not energy efficient, and most of the time it's just not worth using. It's definitely something that you could do. Then also the comparison between like playing lethality and burst, I guess, or just like concealment versus lethality. You're more of a brawler. You're not necessarily the stealthy, the hidey, all that stuff that someone basically has identity with. Lethality is more of a up in your face, fight you kind of class that has the ability to evade and also just tank damage, because it has a lot of healing and it has a lot of damage reduction. And by tank damage, I mean you're mitigating damage with damage reduction, and then you're also healing yourself, therefore you're tanking the damage rather than just forcing somebody to heal you through it. Now it is obviously an advantage. Having extra DR means healing is more valuable even if somebody else is doing it to you, but what I mean by tank is mainly the fact that you can mitigate it yourself while still being relatively safe. Other classes can't really do that, so lethality has this weird brawler playstyle that I generally like. And it has a little bit of a skill cap of learning how to properly heal and how to properly position and how to deal with like certain classes, but for the most part it's not that complicated once you start getting into it. So for example, if I'm ever dealing with an Arsenal Mercenary and he's like in the first 1 or 2 ticks of Blazing Bolts, for example, so like this guy, I can cleanse his slow, but since they designed Arsenal in a way with Blazing Bolts to reapply the slow every single tick, it's much better for me to use evasion. And since I'm running hard stun, I don't have the 7-second evasion, but I still have the 5-second evasion. So this means it's still going to be better for me in this situation, unless I can get to him, kick him, or stun him. Same thing goes for like the penetrating roots. Since that are penetrating blast root for marksman, if they're running the root on it, every single tick will reapply. So cleansing it is pointless, evasion's pretty much your only response. And then sometimes they will bait, if they're smart, they'll bait for the evasion on that ability, but at the same time, that's a lot of their damage that they're losing. But just do keep that in mind. Then when you deal with something, let's say, like lightning. Lightning is not something that you want to fight, it's not something you want to deal with. My best bet would be dot them and get line of sight on them. They will give up pretty quickly. This class is quite spammy. Most people won't sit there and wait, and they'll just find a new target and start casting. And the thing about lightning is that you kind of commit to a target. If you're playing Stormwatch, you're really heavily committing to a target, and that's why they'll go out of their way to hit you. But if you make it impossible for them to hit you, or if you purge your Stormwatch with evasion, they most likely will bother to ab off you, which is nice. So lightning is a hit or miss, I would say. If it's elemental convection, just try to get out of the way. They will counter you really hard. Stormwatch is a little bit easier to deal with, but at the same time, you still just want to line sight them because they have a lot of roots and a lot of control that will get you killed. For something like Fury and Rage, I know there's a lot of Rage Jugs nowadays. Rage Jug is very scary for lethality, and it's mostly just because their burst damage is so high. Even with your damage reduction, their burst damage is very high. During Force Crush window, you are very vulnerable. Your roll will basically go nowhere. And on top of that, they have a couple roots to pair with that slow. That really makes them scary. However, you can do a lot more damage to them if you have Stim Boost and Absorb up at the same time. Chances are you could probably duke it out with them and then pop evasion a little bit later once damage reduction is starting to fall off. But for the most part, it's not really a fight that you really want to take unless you're in a healthy position and have defensives. Then there's like another thing too, like when it comes to Assassin, think of it this way, it's better for you to have health and have a lot of health when it comes to burst DPS. Because your effective damage reduction is really important, but at the same time when it's a class like Deception or Rage Check, you're going to want to CC you to try to secure the kill. If you have a lot of health and you have a lot of damage reduction going, you're going to be much better than losing a lot of health in CCs, breaking, and then popping your damage reduction and then trying to heal through it because you're already on low health, basically making it impossible for you to fight back and apply pressure to them. If you did it in the other way, already have the damage reduction going, or right before you get CC'd, and already are on high health, it's much easier for you to then retaliate as your HP is going down and slowly passively heal yourself. A lot of people will pop their damage reduction just way too late. And that's something, especially against burst DPS, that you have to change. You have to pop your defensives way sooner than you would on a class that does healing. And even then, Mercenary is a good example of it. Mercenary wants to shield all the time. The more shielding that you have in general, the better off you're going to be. Overall, when it comes to most dots, your dot damage reduction, your ability to evasion all the time, because you should be running the evasion CDR unless you have a situation where blow for blow is going to be better. Which there are situations that is true. You're just going to be able to tank and soak the dot damage pretty well. Death Brand will still be pretty annoying to deal with, but Death Brand is really annoying to deal with as a whole. I don't think there's a single class that doesn't really care too much about it. Maybe Assassin, Deception specifically. For the most part, everybody doesn't like that ability. And as you can see, I realized that I am not running a tactical that's very beneficial for me here. And I kind of adjust my playstyle to old lethality, like rotationally. Not completely, but for the most part I am now aware that I am griefing my rotation because I thought I had viral elements, and now that I know that I don't, I'm going to focus less on hazing for spreads and less hazing on like AoEs, but rather use my haze for control. And since we've already been kind of playing a little objective focused, and objectives are relatively easy to play from this position that we're in, and as our class, we're just gonna continue playing the same way. Some of these matches are pretty boring, but I felt like, you know, having the wrong tactical is a good thing to sometimes slow the pace of the match and give people like the chance to kind of see how offensively or how you should approach things if you're not running fire elements. So a lot of people would say lethality is terrible and lethality is no longer good because the fire elements is a bug that it had for a whole expansion finally got fixed. It was really unhealthy for the game and it killed tanks way too fast. I understand a lot of people were like, oh well good, tanks should die. Well, when it comes to competitive gameplay, the only thing keeping this game from being basically WoW is the fact that tanks are actually useful in this game. Compared to WoW, most of the time they're just a worse DPS with a lot more control. And I assure you, if you dealt with tanks in WoW, you would not care about how tanks work in this game at all. They are incredibly annoying, they're irritating, they can do a lot of healing, they do a lot of CC, and essentially they can't really protect their allies the way that they can in this game. In this game they actually have a hybrid focus on damage and protection. Between taunting, CCing at the right times, obviously, just like you would in WoW, you also have the guard mechanic. This kind of prevents the brain dead gameplay, as I would say, of just tunneling one target. Now, WoW has a lot more utility, has a lot more CC, has a lot more stuff to use versus this game. With this game having even less, it simplifies gameplay to the point that it would be comical, and is why it's comical in Arena when you go from a 4 DPS match to a tank and 3 DPS match. Differences. Anyway, don't want to go on a tangent on that, but basically tanks are essential to the combat triangle in this game, and if they were gone or just rendered useless, it wouldn't be good for the game. Honestly, I probably wouldn't even bother playing it anymore, outside of just enjoying nostalgia, mostly just because the gameplay would be so dumb. I would just be playing whatever does the most damage and just killing everybody, and that would be it. So there would be no more thought ever required for this game. Top of that, in both WoW and in this game, there are aggressive playstyles. In aggressive playstyles, it's like literally scientifically proven that when you play aggressive or you get the jump on people or you force people to react to you rather than vice versa, they will more likely than not make more mistakes than vice versa. If you guys like equally open and there's no like real surprise, it's pretty average, right? But when it comes to having like a hyper aggressive immediately in your face, game just started kind of thing, having those aggressive playstyles, people usually make mistakes and don't know what to do or don't handle it very well or waste things that they didn't have to. So it's definitely a concept to think about when it comes to classes that can deal with a lot of damage. For example, if you've watched any of my old lethality videos where play solo ranked, and I know for a fact, not only was I confident, I wasn't being cocky, I was confident of the fact that I could run into their team 1v4, make myself a target, and walk away just fine because I know that they couldn't kill me. There was maybe a 1 to 10% chance that they could kill me, and that's only if they played it perfectly, and even if they played it perfectly, the team would be able to recover for me. Nowadays, it's less so a thing that you could do. If you try to 1v4 right now, especially against like an APPT, you'll probably die. And that's only because damage is so much higher than what it used to be. And lethality is still just as strong as it used to be. Sure, its damage just died out just a little bit. It is not able to get away with the things that it used to. If that makes sense, damage was lower then, now damage is higher. Your damage reduction is not going to keep you alive. But anyway, moving on to how you should play lethality, like if you're not running fire elements. You've got your 2 dots, right? Normally you'll just apply it to everybody. You want to get that slow on everybody, you want to get those dots going. Toxic Haze does a lot of damage to the area of denial. You can put it on the door, as I do here. Toxic Blast is the mandatory dot that you want to put on a target for your Corrosive Assault because it'll help with your energy management, but also it'll just be more damage. And then you want to shiv on cooldown. If you're single targeting, shiving on cooldown helps you manage your Corrosive Assault. So you want to Corrosive Assault, shiv, Corrosive Assault, so on and so forth, and eventually never really have energy problems outside of just having to re-up like Toxic Blast and using more energy bursts, or not energy burst, Corrosive Assault, sorry. And in this situation, obviously Viral Elements would be incredibly good. And when it comes to, is it Lethal Strike? I believe that's what they call it. I could not remember the name of that ability for so long now. It's definitely been a while. Having like my thoughts mixed together right now. That ability increases your dot damage by, or dot critical hit damage by 30%, and your healing over time critical hit damage, or critical healing damage, whatever, same thing. Critical hit multiplier is what you would call it. Surge would be the old term. By 30% for 6 seconds after you use it. That is pretty big. If you have hots on everybody in an arena and you have dots on everybody and you hit that and you have your haze down, and let's say you're running the haze heal, the amount of healing and damage you get out of that combo is an incredible amount, and most of the time it'll actually probably just turn the tides of a match, or even like carry you through a match, or at least set up the groundworks for doing so. A lot of healing, it may not be completely effective, and it's also quite a bit of damage. So a lot of times in Arena too, if you guys are playing Lethality in Arena, your role, you won't be able to connect the dots, you won't be able to hit the target. It's much better for you to apply probes to yourself, your allies. Typically, not bother to constantly keep 4 probes up because you still need to do damage. Your damage rotation, and when you've lost the ability to stay on target, start probing, roll healing, and stuff like that to your allies. Remember, you can also cleanse things like flashbang, sniper roots, or sniper knock. You can cleanse most of the tech slows. It's just good to know what you can cleanse. It'll help you a lot. That's pretty much the close of this match. There's tons of stuff that I could talk about lethality wise, but I'll save that for a different video. Anyway, going into our next match, it's another Void Star. We're playing some Scrapper Scoundrel. I don't play this one as much, mostly just because the durability is not there. And secondly, the 4 meter range is still an issue. If they should have done any changes, I don't think it needed more damage, honestly. If it got revitalizers back, I wouldn't be mad. I think it does need revitalizers. It didn't need the extra damage. If we had the option to take the crit damage, or I mean the critical hit chance or whatever, stim boost versus the revitalizer one, chances are the revitalizer one would be better most of the time. And then on top of that, you have the fact that you're still 4 meters. Out of all the changes that you could possibly do to this class, having at least 1 more meter, maybe 2 more meters would be a game changer. Even if it was a tactical, it would change things completely. It has to be a little bit more playable, and obviously the volatile strike tactical is a little bit too, say, required. That maybe not having that as tactical would be a good idea, but you get the ideal, like the gist of it. I like the changes to evasion, and for the most part, the movement speed is pretty cool. I am not taking the hard stun specifically for that, to capitalize on that a little bit more, because I do think the mobility is a little bit better. I find myself immediately know when I'm in trouble and know how to get out of that situation rather than having the hard stun. That makes sense. Having the hard stun obviously would help me, but I feel like having that little extra ability to get out of dodge would just be a little bit more useful. And then also the movement speed that you get with it. Completely worth it in my opinion. However, if I was to play Arena, I wouldn't bother doing this. I don't think this would be a good ideal, and I probably would always go the hard stun. And for the most part, you can see me that I am trying to do damage, and then I'm trying to run away, heal, line of sight, make it impossible for them to just like hit me and lock me down and try to make me a target. They see me for a couple of seconds, and then I kind of leave. And there's situations where I can push, and I know I can push because they're all staring at the door. So for example, this guy, by himself, everybody's going to leave him behind. I know I can play aggressive unless he starts hitting me. If he starts hitting me, I have to play accordingly. So what my game plan is, pretty much to roll his damage, but also cleanse anything I can, especially the slows. So for example, if I was slowed by the commando knockback, which is something he definitely should have done, but I don't think he really did, I would immediately cleanse that and then roll back in. Typically when you're playing something like this, especially something that's squishy, it's known to be slippery and it's sometimes hard to kill. People still have this ideal of it being some god class and they can't kill it, or they won't even try. It'd be a waste to use their damage and they roll it and then they do no damage, so they'll just never even bother, which you can play that into your own advantage. So being slippery intentionally will just allow you to strive a lot more. However, if people really want to lock you down, they will, and people are very, very squishy. If people want to kill you, they will, and it will definitely happen really fast. Typically here with the nothing personal tactical, I'm really only just doing volatile into a shiv, into crippling slice, into back blast. This is really just a simple loop for bursts, and then also you have the auto crit after leg shot. Not leg shot, but you know, crippling slice. The only reason I run that is just because I don't feel like the other ones are that worthwhile, and I like to hit big numbers, so I will run that and sometimes have more fun just doing that instead. However, if you're looking for ability to stay on target a little bit better, I would recommend against going and playing it. I'd probably recommend the range one, and the reason why I would do that is because it makes things a lot easier for you. So it makes it just easier to play. And also at any point, if you're trying to counterplay against a concealment operative or scrapper scoundrel during leg slice, after they put volatile on you, they're most likely going to try to go for their shiv / backstab. Probably a good time to pop a defensive and or try to stun them or knock them away. Especially if you can knock them away and get a slow on them at the same time, like a mercenary or commando. Or the knockback route from like sniper, or even the overload. Obviously, you wouldn't be able to overload in that situation, but you know, somebody else overload for you, that'd be great. Typically, if you ever wanted to counter operative in general, just keep moving. That's really all you have to do, is just keep moving. Their abilities are very close range, and if you keep moving, you're walking out toxic haze. If you keep moving, you're making it harder for them to stay on target to do their combo. On top of that, you're probably forcing them to either use their crippling slice to root you so they can continue hitting you, or use their hard stun to continue hitting you. And then on top of that, lethality just kind of needs you to stay in its haze, and if it doesn't choose to do that, a lot of damage is lost, because a lot of damage actually does come from toxic haze. And the same thing could be said for concealment. Whenever you get AoEs and you have the ability to throw down toxic haze, or if you want to, there's actually a decent amount of damage that you can gain out of doing that. However, it's not necessary, or really the best move some of the times. Especially if you're running to CC, like with seismic grenade and stuff like that, you're gonna end up breaking it. Of course, when it comes to dealing with most of the classes, your really only response is to pop evasion. If evasion completely counters what you're playing against, then great. If it's something else that doesn't really get countered by evasion, rolling is kind of your only answer. When it comes to rolling too, if you want to try to think of ways that you can extend the distance of your roll, you can find a way where you can roll off a ledge, get some extra distance, or if you can roll over something that'll give you a little bit more drop off, so you extend the distance of your roll. And on top of that, knowing how to roll. Don't roll with a massive slow on you. Don't roll with a lot of bad debuffs on you. Typically avoid that. Pop a cleanse before you roll, especially if you're going to use your roll for an escape. Pop your evasion. Don't really recommend evasion most of the time, but evasion sometimes is the only thing that you have to respond to something. Let's say somebody death branded you and you need to desperately get it off you so you can roll for your max distance. Evasion's sometimes the only thing that you have. Alternatively, you also have Hollow Stride. I bind my caps lock to the button next to enter. It can be anything, but I use my caps lock for a different ability. So like a different button on my keyboard. So I don't have the ability to turn on my caps lock, which is fine for me because I don't use it in the first place, but it allows me to have a keybind for target nearest ally. And what I use that for is to hollow traverse and self-heal like allies nearby. Otherwise, for the most part, like just for intercede and hollow traverse, having that keybind is incredibly useful. So for example, if you're playing Rage Jug, you jump in, do some damage. Your damage reduction is about to fall off, you have another leap available. You can intercede to an ally behind you, and then you can turn around and leap again. Get your damage reduction and CC immunity rolling once again. Same thing goes for like operative. You're able to hollow traverse to either an enemy or an ally. So let's say you're in a bad position, you need to hollow traverse to an ally. You can hollow traverse pretty much out of trouble. And then obviously, you know, the normal use is just using against allies and covering distance like a gap closer. Do you think of that as more of like a defensive, especially on concealment? And when it comes to closing the gap on targets, it's really good to always stay behind line of sight or come from an angle that they can't easily see you, spot you, or see that you're coming at them. The more obvious your routing or your pathing is, like the more likely you're just going to get absolutely creamed before you even get close to them. Chances are, if you're rolling in twice just to hit somebody, you're probably dead for that. And they know that you just rolled twice, they're going to probably nuke you. So for the most part, if you can get to the target without ever having to use your roll, like using a hollow traverse in, it's really good. But do know that you're going to have to use your rolls for defensive purposes. Don't just use both of them for trying to stay on target. You need to plan accordingly to stay on target. Otherwise, you are just going to die. The class is definitely a lot harder than what it used to be when it comes to playstyle, but sometimes it can be pretty fun. I personally just don't care for it because it is more of like a hidey kind of class. I like to brawl, so lethality is more of a thing for me. I played lethality for a really long time too, so naturally I'm going to be a little bit more biased towards it, even though I can play concealment. Nothing more exciting back in the day as lethality. We obviously had more buttons back then, but for example, think of slowing somebody pretty badly, rolling away, and then going into crouch so they can't leap to you, and then channeling a snipe. There is something stupid but hilarious about the stuff that you used to be able to do. We used to have like orbital strike too. Like there was a lot of tools that we used to have, and that's kind of like why operative got the mantle of really difficult or just really crazy, like high skill expression class, because it had so much tools, so much utility, so much stuff available to it. Now it's really got not much of anything. It's got some heals, it's got some cleanse, it's got god mode roll. It has some things, but just not like it used to. Lethality pretty much is the same spec from last expansion, except for it's missing one ability. Not a big slap on the wrist. Concealment definitely got hurt a lot more, but in general, pruning is really just hurting skill expression and potential fun, in my personal opinion, of the game. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the objective gameplay / TDM. I'll catch you guys again soon.